Hello guys, this is CA Vishal Jain, your faculty for ACCA, FR and SBR paper. Guys, as you all know that it is always recommended to study at least last 3 examiner reports. But in this session, what I have done is I have analyzed past 10 examiner reports and made a summary of all the tips and the tricks and the important questions and the trends or the mistakes to be avoided in the exam, which the examining team is recommending to you guys. Okay, so with this session you will get the complete understanding of the last 10 examiner reports, and if you watch this session I assure you that you are not required to go specifically and read the examiner report again, because this covers past 10 examiner reports of ACCA FR. Okay, so now in this session I will first of all discuss the paper pattern of ACCA financial reporting paper, because I believe that if you understand the paper pattern properly, half of the question is resolved there itself. Okay, so you need to understand the paper pattern properly, and I will be discussing it here. Second, I have identified some trend in the paper. Okay, now identifying the trend doesn't mean that you are required to study only that much. No, use it positively for your preparation. Okay, now I will be discussing the examining team comments on questions of section A and B, which are objective type questions. Examining team comments on interpretation answers. Now I will discuss examining team comments on preparation of financial statements, be it single entity or be it group entities financial statements. Now all of us talk about own figure rule, own figure rule, own figure rule, but let me tell you, most of the students doesn't know what exactly is the meaning of own figure rule and how exactly it works. Okay, so I will explain the meaning of own figure rule with the help of an example so that you know what exactly is the marking scheme behind own figure rule. Also, there are few generic comments given by ACCA examining team, okay, for the entire ACCA FR, which also I'll be discussing with you. Now, what I have identified is students struggle in identifying that which income or expense will go to other comprehensive income and which income or expense will go to P and L. So what I have done is I have made a complete list, okay, applicable for your FR paper, that which all items will go to OCI, and apart from that all items will go to P and L. So I will guide you here as well. Now further, I will also be guiding you here is what exactly should be your approach for the 3 hours, the exam time. Okay, 3 hours of exam time, what approach you should take, what should be the order of attempting the paper. Okay, so these are the things which I'll be discussing in this paper, and yes, towards the end I will give you a surprise. Towards the end I will give you a surprise, so let's wait for the same and watch this video towards the till the end. Till the end I definitely ensure you that you will be benefited out of this video. Okay, let's watch the session. But before we start, only one thing, that if please like this video, and if you're new to this channel, subscribe to this channel and also share this video with your friends so that this video gets maximum reach. Okay, so first part is understanding the FR paper pattern. Okay, understanding the FR paper pattern. So as we know that FR paper is divided into 3 parts: section A, section B and section C. Section A is of 30 marks, wherein you will get 15 objective type questions. Okay, and each of these questions will be of 2 marks each. So how much it becomes? 15 into 2 is 30 marks. Now understand, in section B also you will get the same pattern: 15 objective type questions of 2 marks each, totaling to 30 marks. If both of them are objective type questions, then what is the need of differentiating section A and section B? The difference here is, understand, in section A these objective type questions will be different from each other. They are not interlinked, they are independent. But in section B, these 15 objective type questions, they are linked. So basically you will get 3 case studies. In each case study you will get 5 objective type questions, and now these 5 objective type questions will be linked to each other, okay. Plus I will say one more thing, that the questions of section B will be little bit more advanced as compared to that of section A questions. Okay, now coming to section C, which comes for 40 marks, we'll have 2 questions of 20 marks each. Okay, will come of 40 marks, which will have two questions of 20 marks each. So 2 into 20 is 40. Now, what are the questions that will be tested in section C? So as you know, in section C, they can test preparation of single entity financial statements, or they can test preparation of group financial statements, or they can test you can say interpretation. Now there is a high level of noise that, sir, will cash flow get tested or not? So I'll tell you, yes, the cash flow can get tested, though it is a different thing, though that ACCA has not asked a full-fledged question on preparation of cash flow. Okay, but yes, they can ask interpretation of cash flow statements. They can ask you extract of cash flow statements. So you have to prepare cash flow properly. You cannot ignore cash flow statements. Okay. No, recording of this class won't be made available. Okay. Now, one more thing. There is a again high level of confusion that objective type questions are MCQs. No, they are not saying MCQs. They are saying objective type questions. Now, objective type questions can be MCQs, can be true or false, can be one word answers. It can be anything. It's not only MCQs. It is objective type questions. So it can be MCQs, true, false, one word answers. It can be anything. I believe it is very much clear to all of you till here. Now, I was saying you about the analysis of the past 9 attempts of section C. So understand, in section C, if I was analyzing the past 9 attempt questions, so what I got to know was, just see, in March, June 2020, they have asked group P&L plus comparison of two companies. So one is for preparation of financial statements and one is for interpretation. Again, if you see September, December 2020, they have asked interpretation from the group. Then they have asked preparation of financial statements of single entity. Similarly, if you see March, June 21, they have asked group P&L. And they have asked comparison of two companies. So basically, if I have to analyze these 9 papers and give you my crux, now the crux of that will be, in any exam, they will test 2 questions. The combination that they make is, combination number 1. They will ask you preparation of single entity financial statements. They will ask you preparation of single entity financial statements, and if they ask preparation of single entity financial statements, then they will ask you interpretation from group. Then they will ask you interpretation from group FS. Or combination number 2 can be, they will ask you preparation of group FS. They will ask you preparation of group FS plus they can ask you interpretation of single entity financial statements. So this way they are covering both group accounts and interpretation both. Okay, group accounts, single entity and interpretation both, all of them they are trying to cover using this combination. Okay, so if there is any student who says that, sir, can we leave interpretation? No, interpretation will be asked in the exam. Can we leave single entity financial statements? No. If you don't study single entity financial statements, you will not be able to analyze or interpret the single entity financial statements. So the combination has been designed in a manner that you can't leave anything. Whether it be single entity financial statements, group FS, or interpretation of FS. You can't leave anything. Okay. So that's why I'm saying here, these are the 3 areas where the question can be asked and you can't leave anything. And trust me, don't take risk with section C questions. I believe this analysis will give you a fair understanding that we can't take the risk of leaving any chapters from these three ones. Okay. Now, proceeding further. Comments on section A and section B questions. So what are the examining team comments on section A and section B answers? Understand guys, what I have done is I have reviewed around 12 examiner reports. I have reviewed around 12 examiner reports. Okay. And in this 12 examiner reports, when I was reviewing this 12 examiner reports, it is then I have made this summary. Okay. Went through each and every examiner report, went to each and every details and made the summary. Okay. So generally it is recommended that you should read at least 3 examiner report. But by watching this session, I am telling you with assurity that you are getting the benefit of reading the examiner report of last 12 attempts, not 1, not 2, not 3, 12 attempts. So please watch this sincerely and understand. Okay. Now in section A and section B, as we know that there can be a question on one word answers, and a student does make the mistake even though they know the concept. Let's suppose there is a question which asks you to calculate the depreciation, and you have very well calculated depreciation as 436,884. You very well calculated depreciation as 436,884. But now the question is asking you write your answer to nearest thousands. And if you write 436,884, you will get 0. You will get 0. You will get 0. Why? Because if the question is clearly stating to write your answer in nearest thousands. Now, what is the nearest thousand figure? 437,000. So you have to write the answer as 437,000. 437,000. If the same question would have asked dash is given and they have written thousands, so you will write only 437. If the question written dash and they have written millions, so you will write 0.437. So you need to understand the mode in which the answer is being asked. You need to understand the mode in which the question is being asked. Similar to this, let's suppose you calculated depreciation as 142.76. And if the question is silent, you will simply write 142.76. In this case also, if the question is silent, you will write 436,884. In this case also, if the question is silent, you will write 436,884. But if the question specifies these three things, you will write the answer accordingly. Similarly, in depreciation, if the question is silent, you will write 142.76. But if the question says to the nearest whole dollars, then you will write 143. Guys, tell me, please, are you following up with me? Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Can you please confirm in the chat box, all of you? Can you please confirm in the chat box what I'm trying to say? Is that clear to all of you? You need to ensure that you are not repeating these mistakes in the exam. Okay, that's when this session will be useful for all of us, for you and for me. Now, one more point. Examining team says students are not reading the question properly, and the examining team has given you an example also. Tanvi is saying if the answer is 142.44, then what will be the answer? In that case, you will write 142. In that case, I will write 142, not 143. Okay, Tanvi? Yes, very good. Now, so examining team says that you need to read the question properly. Now, what exactly is meant by reading the question properly? So understand. So examining team says, let's suppose there is a question that on 1st January 20x1, we have taken a machine on lease, and we have taken it on lease for 3 years. 1, 2, 3. The lease payments are 1,000 per annum. Now read the question properly. Whether these lease payments are in advance or in arrears. In a hurry to solve the question fastly, we forget this small point whether the lease payment was made in advance or in arrears. So read the question carefully. Now, following again. So let's suppose the lease payments are paid in arrears, meaning at the end of the year, and the discount rate is 8%. So what is the present value? 2577. Now the question is asking you calculate finance cost for the year ended 31st December 20x2. Now, what will student do? Okay, my lease liability is 2577, discount rate is 8%. So my finance cost will be how much? 2577 multiplied by 8% is 206. My dear friend, this answer is wrong. Why? Because you calculated the finance cost for this year 31st December 20x1, but the question was asking 31st December 20x2. So please read the question carefully. The question was asking you the finance cost for this year. Now how to calculate the finance cost for this year? So first of all, we need to calculate the carrying amount as on this date. How to calculate? So we'll say what is the opening lease liability is this much. Finance cost for this year is 206. Then we have paid the amount of 1000. So what is the carrying amount? The carrying amount happens to be 1783. Now the finance cost the asked in the question is for this year. So the finance cost will be 1783 multiplied by 8%, which comes to 142.64 is the answer. 142.64 is the answer. Tell me guys, are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Is that clear to all of you? Okay, now further. So the examining team is saying that read the question carefully, make a note of the dates carefully. When is the lease starting? When is the finance cost being asked? What is the reporting date? What is the date of acquisition of subsidiary? What is the reporting date? Which period expense is being asked? So make a note of the dates carefully. Okay, make a note of the dates very carefully. Okay, read the requirement carefully. Many a times, let's suppose in the question of lease, question says what is the total cost relating to ROU. Then we have to give finance cost plus depreciation both. If the question says what is a depreciation, then we have to give only depreciation. If the question says give finance cost, then we have to give only finance cost. So read the question carefully. Read the question carefully and understand that in questions of section A and section B, you either get 2 or 0. You either get 2 or 0. There is no 1, 1.5, 0.5. No, there is nothing that. There is nothing of that sort. Okay, and also there is no negative marking. Now, how can we use this term no negative marking? I will guide you. But before that, one person TG Stop is asking me a query that he didn't understand the question, this part. So let me explain this part. No worry, I will explain this part again. So buddy, please understand, this is the case of lease. Okay, now we have taken the asset on lease and the lease payments are 1000 per annum. So what is the value of lease liability on this date? So we will calculate the present value of this and this at the rate of 8%. The present value comes to 2577. Okay, now we have to unwind and record the finance cost. Unwind and record the finance cost. The question was calculate finance cost for the year ended 31st December 20x2. 31st December 20x2 meaning this year. Financial year ended 31st December 20x2. That is this year. But students, you can calculate for this year and come in the exam, okay, which will be wrong. So please see the dates carefully. Please see the dates carefully. I believe it is clear. Now, when I say no negative marking, how can we best utilize this part? So understand, definitely the questions which you know, you should solve it. But the questions, there might be some questions which you don't know. Don't leave that question. There is no negative marking now. So even if you don't know the question, apply some logic and solve that question. Apply your logic and solve that question. Apply your logic and solve that question. Even if it is wrong, there is no harm. But if it is right, you will gain 2 marks. If it is right, you will gain 2 marks. Okay. So make use of this process. So these are the comments by the ACCA examining team on section A and section B. Now moving on to comments on section C questions. Guys, tell me, is that helping you? Okay. So first is interpretation. Okay. So let us discuss what are the comments by the ACCA examining team on section C questions. So here I have divided this part into 2 parts. One is interpretation and one is numerical questions, that is preparation of single entity financial statement, that is SOFP, P&L or cash flow, or preparation of group financial statement, that is group SOFP, group P&L. Okay, all those things are also there. Now let me discuss that with you. So it says on interpretation questions, what students does in the exam is not adequately using the information given in the scenario. I will tell you what they do in the exam and then I will guide you how to write your answers in the exam. Guys, this is the most important part, so please listen carefully. Now what students does in the exam is they calculate the ratios correctly. There is no harm in that. They calculate the ratios properly. Then they say that, okay, the gross profit has increased. Correct. No issue. Then what they do, now if we have written that gross profit has increased, then we definitely need to write the reasons for the increase. Now when we're writing the reasons, what students does is they write the rote learnt answers that is there in their textbook, which the examining team is not accepting. Okay, when there is an increase of gross profit, so gross profit has increased because the entity would have increased the prices of the product or decreased the cost of the product. No, we don't need this type of answers. Try to find the reasons of increase of gross profit in the given scenario. In the given scenario, try to find out the reasons. In the scenario, there will be the reasons. There will be the reasons. Let's suppose there is a question called as a mower company. I'm giving you an example. Gross profit decreased. Okay. Why gross profit decreased? Or operating profit decreased. Why operating profit decreased? The reason was, the question was saying, in the last year, the flight took off for 100 times. In the current year also, flight took off for 100 times. Okay. So the number of flights in the previous year, in the current year is same. The cost of operating the flight in the previous year and the current year is same. But in the previous year, we had high number of footfalls, the passengers. But in the current year, the number of passengers has decreased. Number of passengers decreased, meaning thereby my revenue decreased, but my cost remained constant. Thereby my operating profit decreased. So you need to understand that you are not required to write the rote learnt answers of your textbook. No. You need to link the increase or decrease with the given case scenario. Are you understanding this part? Now, when examining team earlier used to say this. Now, in the examining report of the last 2-3 attempts, the examining team is saying, "Arey bhai, mere bachcho, I was now this whatever I'm saying is the statement given by the examining team." Okay. I'm saying it in my own words, but this is what the examining team meant. So examining team is saying, "Bachcho, I asked you not to write the rote learned answers and I asked you to take the reference from the scenario. But you took me in a wrong manner." What students started doing is, students started to copy the scenario and paste as reasons. No! You are not required to copy paste. You are required to reference. So read this line. copying directly from the scenario will not be awarded marks. No, you are not required to just copy it. You are required to use the scenario to explain the reasons of increase and decrease. Okay, copying directly from the scenario will not be awarded marks and should be avoided. Candidates that are simply copying out information from the question, this would appear to be because, see, read this line. This would appear, why are students doing this? This would appear to be because of previous examiner reports where candidates have been advised to use the scenario. Examining team advised students to read the scenario, okay, to use the scenario. What students started doing? They started copy pasting the scenario. No, that is not required. Okay. However, to score marks in this information must be used in context of the scenario and ratio results rather than just copy paste. Okay. So understand, neither you are required to write the rote learnt reasons of increase decrease, nor you are required to copy paste the entire scenario. So what we are required to do is we are required to use the scenario to explain the reasons of increase and decrease. Are you understanding this part with me? Come on guys, tell me, are you understanding this part with me? Okay. Now ACCA examining team is telling you how to produce the best answer. How to produce the best answer for interpretation. So it is telling you, use the scenario when discussing the differences in the ratios. It should be supported with information from scenario. It should be supported with information from the scenario. Okay, you are not required to copy paste. Support it. Okay. Now, always consider why the results are different. Basically, why there is a increase or decrease. Okay, and don't simply state that result has increased, decreased. No, don't just say that gross profit has increased, gross profit decreased. No, write the reasons of the same using the scenario. All further, in the answers of interpretation, there is one more comment from the examining team. Students, don't write conclusion. The third comment, the important comment is always provide a conclusion that is relevant to the requirement. Now understand, whenever you are reading the question of interpretation, in the very first instance itself, they will identify a issue statement. That is, entity directors are considering that the profitability of the company has decreased. Use this data and analyze the financial performance and financial position and conclude. So now when you are giving a conclusion of your answer of interpretation answers, use the issue statement. And conclude your answer. Okay, so you have to give your conclusion. I'm not saying in the conclusion you have to write very long conclusion. No, just one or two sentences, but you need to give your conclusion linked to the issue statement. Always provide a conclusion that is relevant to the requirement. Candidates should note that all appraisal questions, interpretation questions, should include a final heading or a conclusion or a recommendation with a short suitable conclusion या recommendation. Are you understanding this part? Now, additional comments. There are some additional comments. So always try to write what if analysis. Now, what is this what if analysis? So there can be some one-off items in your interpretation, like revaluation reserve, like fire, loss due to fire, okay, earthquakes. So these are one-off items. Loss due to fire, or you can say loss due to earthquake. These are one-off items. Okay, so standard says when there is a revaluation reserve or when there is a one-off items, in that case, do what if analysis, meaning thereby, let's suppose your ROCE in the previous year, in the ROCE of, let's suppose, Infosys is 10% and ROCE of the IT sector is 20%, but this decrease of ROCE from sector to Infosys, why? Because Infosys has high revaluation reserve. High revaluation reserve. So now what you have to do? What if analysis. What if ROCE, what if revaluation reserve was not existing? What if revaluation reserve was not existing? Okay, now in that case, my ROCE would have been 18%. So now you have to calculate 18% and 10% and both. So this is called as what if analysis. This is called as what if analysis. So you have to give your what if analysis as well. I believe you are understanding this part. Now, whenever you are calculating the ratios, so understand in the interpretation question, first part is about calculation of the ratios and the second part is about interpretation of the ratios. So whenever you are calculating ratios, ensure that you are giving the formula of the ratio and also the calculation of ratios. Don't just write the ratio. If you are simply writing the ratio, if it is correct, yes, you will get the marks. But if it is wrong, you will not get the marks. But understand what is the examining team trying to say. In the absence of a working and incorrect ratio will score 0. But if you have given the workings, however, it may be a arithmetical error. It may be an arithmetical error. Let's suppose your ratio is 10 by 5, but by mistake, you have written 10 by 5 is equals to 2.5, but your answer should be 2. But if you have given the working, if you have given the working, let's suppose, you have done 10 by 5 is equals to 2.5. Though this 2.5 is wrong, we know, but the examiner will give you marks for this if you are showing this 10 by 5. But let's suppose if you are not showing this 10 by 5 and just writing 2.5, you will not get single mark, 0. So you have to give the calculations. Let's suppose you are calculating debt equity ratio. You are calculating debt. So you have to write debt formula. First write debt by equity. Then write what are the components of debt. What are the components of debt that you have taken? What are the components of equity that you have taken? So write everything and then calculate the ratio Okay. So even if there is any arithmetical error, so still you will get some marks. You will still get some marks in there. You will still get some marks here. Is that clear, everyone? So these are the comments of the ACCA examining team on interpretation answers. Now I am moving on to the comments from on numerical questions. The only comment which I found in numerical questions is the use of own figure rule. Students know that there is something called as own figure rule that exists, but students hardly knows how exactly own figure rule applies. How can we make the best use of own figure rule? They don't know. So let us understand it with the help of an example. So let's suppose parent P purchased 80% shares of subsidiary S at $90 million on 1st January 20x1. Net assets on date of acquisition is $88 million and the fair value of NCI on date of acquisition is $22 million. Now tell me, here if the fair value of net assets is NCI is given, meaning thereby NCI is at fair value model, right? So if NCI is at fair value model, so we will take the fair value of NCI to calculate goodwill. So my correct goodwill should be 90 plus 22 minus 88. It should be how much? 90 plus 22 minus 88 is how much? 24. But what a student has done, he took 90 plus he took the proportionate share of net assets. That is 20%. But this is wrong. Minus 88 is equals to 19.6. So this is the correct goodwill. And this is the wrong goodwill. So let me write here. This is correct, this is wrong. But understand, if there is a student who simply writes goodwill is 19.6, he will fetch 0 marks. But if there is a student who has written, okay, that investment is 90 and NCI is 17.6 and net assets is 88, and then my goodwill comes to 19.6, then that student will fetch 2 out of 3. But if you are writing simply 19.6, that student will score 0. That student will score 0. Okay, now again the question is saying that the goodwill is impaired by 10%. So now even if you have calculated 19.6, okay, now there are two students. Student 1 who simply writes impairment loss is 1.96. What he did is he calculated 19.6 multiplied by 10% is 1.96. He simply wrote impairment of goodwill is 1.96. You know what? He will get 0 marks. Why? See, because your goodwill was wrong, hence your impairment of goodwill is also wrong. Okay, because the figure is not matching. The figure is not matching. The figure is wrong. The figure is wrong. The figure is wrong. But now there is another student. There is one more student who writes here 19.6 multiplied by 10% is equals to 1.96. You know, this student will fetch 1 by 1. 1 out of 1 marks he will fetch. Why? Because the examining team will think, okay, we have already deducted the marks for wrong goodwill. Now, the impairment of goodwill he has calculated correctly on the basis of wrong goodwill. So his knowledge of impairment of goodwill is correct. His knowledge of impairment of goodwill is correct. So let's give him full marks for that. Let's give him full marks for that. Even though this answer is wrong, still you are getting full marks for the same. Still you are getting full marks for the same. Why? The simple reason here is you have given this working. You have given this working. You have given this working. So now what I can say simply here is, for section C questions, give the workings wherever possible. Give your workings. Don't assume anything. Don't assume anything that examiner will know this. No. Write everything. Write all the workings. Give all the workings possible. The more workings that you give, the more marks that you score. Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear, everyone? Are you understanding this part? So now moving further, general comments. Examining team is stating that students are not giving reference. Students are not giving reference. Let's suppose they have in the SOFP. Let's suppose they have calculated goodwill in the working notes and they simply wrote 17.64 is the goodwill. So they should write here, refer following working note. Give the reference. Give the reference, without which how will examiner know? How will examiner know that from where have you calculated this? So give the reference to working notes. Wherever you are using those working notes, state the reference. Okay. Now let's suppose in one question there are multiple requirements. Leave a space between two requirements of same question. Leave space between two requirements of same question. Now the third comment is time management. Now what examining team is saying that, see, there are total of 100 marks question, and you have to solve this 100 marks question, you have 180 minutes. So we can say that for per mark you have 1.8 minutes. 1.8 minutes. So use this rule to solve it. Okay, don't spend more than 1.8 minutes on a question. Don't spend more than 1.8 minutes on a question. Okay, but I will tell you one thing. So there are questions which might take 2.5 minutes also, and there will be a question which might take you can say let's suppose section A and section B. Talking about section A first of all. Now, section A, there might be a question which might take 5 minutes. Also, there might be a question which might take only 1 minute. So how to do that? So in section A, how many questions are there? 15 questions. How many marks? 20 marks. 20 marks. Sorry, not 20, 30 marks. 30 marks. So 30 into 1.8 is how much? Tell me. 30 into 1.8 is how much? 54 minutes. But ideally, I will tell you 54 minutes is too much for section A. 54 minutes is too much for section A. I will tell you, give only 30 minutes to section A. It is more than sufficient. Section A, 30 minutes is more than sufficient. If you want to give more, max to max 35. Okay, so I will give you a range. For section A, you should spend 30 to 35 minutes. Don't spend more than that. In section B, spend more, max to max 40 to 45 minutes. In section B, spend max to max 40 to 45 minutes. And in section C, the rest of time. Okay, so what is the rest time? Out of 180 minus 45 minus 35, how much? 80, 100 minutes. Why 100 minutes? Why I am doing this disproportion? Because in section C, you have to give lot of workings you have to show, which is not the case with section A and section B. You are not required to show any workings. You can do everything in the rough and just tick mark. So section C will need more time. So I am breaking this rule of 1.8 per minute. Okay, 1.8 minutes per mark. I am breaking this rule. I am giving you this rule, which I believe is the most appropriate rule, considering the level of time required for each questions. Okay, so I am giving you a timeline. The examining team states that students initially take lot of time to solve section A and section B, and later on they don't have time left for section C. If a student has started with section C, he will spend a lot of time in interpretation questions, and then towards the end he doesn't have time for section A and section B. So don't do that. From the very beginning only, be disciplined towards time. Then time will also respect you. If you respect the time, time will also respect you. Okay. Now, what I have noticed, okay, this is not from examining team. Examining team just stated that students have a confusion in the mind. That what all are the items that go to P&L and what all are the items that go to OCI. This is the confusion which remains always in the mind of the students. So now let us break this noise once for all. So let me tell you. So all the income and expense that you see in your ACCA FR goes to P&L except for these three. All the incomes or expense that you see goes to P&L. Now, revaluation gain on property, plant and equipment and intangible assets goes to other comprehensive income. Revaluation gain on property, plant and equipment and intangible assets goes to other comprehensive income. Sir, what about investment property? So revaluation gain on investment property doesn't go to OCI. It goes on to P&L. Students does make a mistake here. So don't make this mistake. Now, fair value gain or loss on investment in equity instruments. If the equity instrument are measured at FVT OCI option, okay, then the fair value gain or loss on investment in equity instruments will go to other comprehensive income. If the question is not specifying this part, then the fair value gain or loss on investment in equity instruments goes on to P&L. These items doesn't go to OCI. Okay. Now, fair value gain on investment property goes to P&L. Okay. Fair value gain on investment in equity instruments, if question is silent, goes to P&L. So all these items goes to P&L. Now, fair value gain or loss on financial assets at FA at FVT OCI will also go to other comprehensive income. Also, deferred tax impact of all of these also goes to OCI. Deferred tax impact of all the above also goes to other comprehensive income. Okay, so I believe this confusion won't arise going forward. One more item. Students ask me, sir, if there is a forex gain or loss, if there is a forex gain or loss, Where will it go? So forex gain, whether it is realized or it is unrealized, irrespective of that, it will go to P&L. It will go to P&L. Okay, I believe it is clear. I believe it is clear. Now comes the last part of the session. Okay, I have a surprise also for you. I have a surprise also. But yes, before that, the last part, how to approach ACCA FR paper in that 3 hours. If you take my recommendation, I will say first solve section A and B. Why? Because section A and B, students, requires huge presence of mind. Because I told, no, see, they are very small minute things. There are very small minute mistakes which you could do in the exam. Minute mistakes which you could do in the exam. Minute mistakes which you could do in the exam. And if your answer is wrong, you are scoring 0. There is no step marking. There is no own figure rule that applies. So it requires huge presence of mind. So first of all, solve section A and B. Try to solve section A and B initially within within 100 minutes. Within first 100 minutes. Within first how many minutes? Not 100. 80 minutes. Yes. Within 80 minutes. Try to solve section A and B first of all in first 80 minutes. And then solve section C. Now when you are solving section C, first solve preparation of FS and then solve interpretation. Why I am saying this? Why I am saying this? Because when answering interpretation questions, we just keep on writing and we don't see the time. Okay, so if you write it towards the end, so there is nothing that can get left. So you have that time, you have the sufficient level of time. But now when you are approaching section A and section B, and if you see that there is some complex question, or you don't know the answer of it, okay, you don't know the answer of it, or you think that this question will take a lot of time, this question will take a lot of time, what I will recommend here is just flag that question and move ahead. Just flag that question and move ahead. Because if it takes substantial amount of time, what is the meaning of substantial amount of time? If you think if there is any question in section A or section B which will take more than 5 minutes, okay, that means it's a complex question. It's a complex question. So for 2 marks, spending that much time now won't be logical. So just flag that question and move ahead and solve the entire question, A, B, C, everything, and then again come to section A and B flagged questions. Section A and B flagged questions. Section A and B flagged questions. So again I will repeat the process which you have to follow. So basically you have to first of all appear section A and B. Okay. While appearing section A and B, if you come across any question that you don't know or you think is a complex question, just flag that question and don't spend much of your time on that. Just flag that question, move ahead. Whatever you know easily, just solve it and move ahead. Okay, solve it and move ahead. And then solve section C and then come to A and B flagged questions. A and B flagged questions. Okay, now when I'm saying this, there might be some student who will say, oh, whatever is the question, are the answers of section A and B, which I know prima facie, that only I will answer, rest all I will do the flag. No. When I say flag the questions, I mean to say the questions which you don't know the answer, okay, wherein you just need to do the guesswork, See, when you are doing the guesswork, it can be right, it can be wrong. Okay, it can be right, it can be wrong. So spending time in the guesswork, rather than spending time in the guesswork, spend time on the questions that you know. So first of all, solve all the questions that you know and then do the guesswork. Whatever you have to do, and do all the guesswork. Don't leave any question. Solve 100 marks. Question, but solve appropriately. Give due importance to each minute of your time and make a note of all these things, whatever I have guided you. Now comes the question, what is the surprise? So I have made a list of top 100 mistakes that you can make in ACCA FR. Okay, so I will be uploading a video of that. Trust me, I have worked rigorously for this. I have worked rigorously for this, and I have made a list of top 100 mistakes that you can make in ACCFR, entire syllabus of it. Made a note of all small mistakes which you could do in the exam. Okay, concept based mistakes which you could do in the exam, and I will upload a video of it by the coming 26th or 27th of November. Okay, and I believe it will be of great help for all of you, so do watch that session as well. Okay, so this is the surprise. I believe this session helped you, right? Tell me, guys. So now whatever is the feedback, do write in the chat box, comment box. Okay, and if you think you need any further of my help, do write in the comment box. Okay, that's all for today, guys. Thank you. Bye bye. This PDF will be made available on my Telegram channel. Okay, bye bye.